Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. Always a pleasure to have you along. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches in the beautiful sunny areas of Sydney's North Shore and Upper North Shore. We also broadcast around Australia on the Community Radio Network, compliments of the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. And to all our regional listeners who tune in every now and then, thank you for dialing in, and thank you for your feedback. It's always a pleasure. Now, we have regular guests, and I'm really pleased to welcome back one of our regular guests, Justin Bott, who's the Media Information Officer from Services Australia. Now, Services Australia comes in many guises, but most of you will know them as Centrelink, and I keep referring back to them because, again, it's brand association. You know who they are. Justin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Now, just recently, we started talking about reverse mortgages for aged pensioners. Now, I guess it really brings us back to some really core questions about the age pension. And one of the things that always astounds me is in debates, particularly when they get lively and animated, about who is entitled to the age pension. And I think today's show is going to help maybe clear up some of the muddied waters that gets strewn around in some of the debates that I see, particularly around immigration and who does and does not get an age pension. So I'd like today to hopefully clear up some of those myths. So let's start at the beginning, because the beginning is a very good place to start. I'm not going to break into a Julie Andrews, okay? Who can get the age pension?
So the first clue is in the name. It's an age pension, which means that you've got to be old enough. And that's what we call age pension age. So age pension age is 67. So you need to be 67 years of age in order to get the pension. You also need to meet our residence requirements. And it is a means tested payment, which means we look at your assessable income and your assessable assets. So we have an income test and an assets test. So you've got to meet those. Am I the right age? Do I meet the residence requirements? Are my income and assets under the limit?
Now, let's quickly talk about means and assets test. In effect, to cut to the chase, what that in effect means is if you're earning too much or own too much, there's a graduated cutoff. But once you get to a certain point, you ain't going to get the pension, are you?
That's right. So when you apply for a payment from Services Australia, we actually have two tests. We look at your assessable income, and we look at your assessable assets, and we work out how much pension you get because of your income and how much pension you get because of your assets. Whichever one pays you the lower rate is the one that we use. If one of them says you're not eligible because your income is too high, your assets are too high, then we can't pay you at all. So if your income is under the limits but your assets are too high, pension can't be paid, and vice versa. If your assets are under the limit but your income is too high, pensions can't be paid. So in order to be eligible, you've got to have both income and assets under the limits and still, again, be over 67 and meet the residence rules.
So rest easy, some of you out there that get all uptight. Gina Rinehart's not drawing the age pension. I don't know if she's even old enough, to be honest, but I'm just saying as an example, those that are out there making squillions are not entitled to the age pension, and nor are non-citizens, which again is one of those misnomers that are out there. You have to pass.
That's actually not true.
No, I can be corrected.
Yeah, you said non-citizens. Citizenship is not a basis of eligibility for the age pension. You don't have to be a citizen. So when we're talking about residency, which is the big question, in order for a pension to be payable, there's a couple of rules. First of all, on the day that you claim, you need to be living in Australia, physically in Australia, and an Australian resident. Now, Australian residency is defined by being, yes, a citizen, but permanent resident visa holder is also a person that can get a payment, and also somebody who's a protected special category visa holder, which is a person coming from New Zealand. They also meet the residency requirements.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. They're specially protected. I'm glad to hear that.
Because obviously there's a special relationship between New Zealand and Australia. We're not even going into things like refugee status and stuff like that. What we're looking for here is it's not just I'm a permanent resident and I claim a pension. There is actually a requirement for the age pension, and that is that you need to be an Australian resident for 10 years And of those 10 years, at least 5 need to be continuously lived within Australia. So you need to be living in Australia with Australian residency for 10 years with at least 5 years continuously in the country. One of the things that you do need to know, though, is that we do have social security agreements with a range of different countries around the world. With those social security agreements, the period of time that you lived in those countries can count towards the 10 years requirement to live in Australia. So it may be that your time living in that agreement country does count towards your 10 years residency. Otherwise, you need that 10 years with the 5 years continuous in order for a pension to be payable.
Now, I know for a fact Italy is one of those countries because my mum and dad my dad, because he was a war veteran from World War II, used to get, I mean, it was not a lot of money, but he used to get a payment from the Italians every quarter. And that reciprocal thing. And talking about that word, I found out because I was in Italy just recently, you were also covered by Medicare in Italy for the first 6 months.
Some to limited extent.
Yeah. But I mean,
but yes, you are.
Cover. You've got cover. So if you get hit by a bus and you're in the emergency ward, they're not going to sit there and wait. You just wave your passport and say, I'm an Aussie, and they'll look after you. So at least you're covered to begin with. Anyway, let's move on. Now, we've talked briefly, you introduced the notion. So hang on, we've covered off residency and we've covered off citizen. So you don't need to be a citizen, but you do need to have residency. Okay. So that's a good one to clear up. I got that wrong. Okay. I got that wrong. Now, you talked about an income and assets test. Can you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Okay, so the word we use often is assessable income and assessable assets. It's really important to acknowledge that word. I don't just throw that out there for no reason. Because when we look at your income, we have our own set of rules on how we work out how much income you're earning. And they're not the Australian Taxation Office's rules, they're not anybody else's rules, they're Services Australia's rules. So we're looking at assessable income. And the reason we say that is because different sources of income are assessed differently. So, for example, we look at gross wages. We don't take any deductions from your wages. It's your gross before any deductions for wages, which is obviously different from the ATO. If it comes to something like running your own business, we look at your gross income less allowable deductions, which does sound like the ATO, but we don't accept all the allowable deductions the Australian Taxation Office accepts. We've got a different rules for us. Same with an investment property, that it's your gross rent less allowable deductions, but not all the allowable deductions are the same for the ATO as they are for Services Australia. The real one that's different is the deemed interest on your financial assets, where we have our
that's
own.
That's one of my questions here.
Deeming
I was going to ask you about deeming.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about deeming.
So deeming is a set of rules that we use to work out the income that you're getting from financial assets. And when I talk about financial assets, what I'm talking about here are things like your bank accounts, your share portfolio, managed investments you might have, loans where you have lent money to other people, any excess gifts that you've made. If you've got it, most income streams, certainly account-based pensions, older account-based pensions are deemed financial assets. And if you're over 67, your super, if it's still sitting in super and you haven't done anything with it, is a deemed financial asset. And what we do is we add all of them together and we then say they are earning a set rate of income. So we deem or we decree or we declare that these investments are earning these fixed rates of interest, this set level of income. Whether they're getting them or not is irrelevant. So if you're getting more than them, great. If you're getting less than them, well, that's something you should think about. But what your payment is based on is not what you're actually receiving, but the interest that we are saying that you're receiving. So now I will say that the figures I'm about to give you are going to be changing on the 20th of March. They've just been announced that they're going up a little bit. So be aware that these interest rates do change. They're not fixed again to the official interest rate. So they do change when the government decides to change them, not when the official interest rate changes. If I'm a single person, the first $64,200 I have in financial assets, the deeming rate at the moment is 0.75%. Everything over the 64,000, the interest rate goes up to 2.75%. If I'm a member of a couple, it's 106,200. So the first 106,200, we're going to say you're getting 0.75%, and then again, everything over that is then 2.75%. So if we use a standard account-based pension as an example, I'm 67 years of age. I am required to take a minimum drawdown of 5% from the fund. So I do. The deeming rate on that fund is only 2.75%. So Services Australia is saying I'm getting 2.75%. I'm actually taking down 5%. That 2.25% increase, the more that I'm getting more than that, is just money in my pocket, not accessible for Services Australia, not going to affect the rate of pension that I'm getting. If I choose to draw down 8%, we're still saying it's a maximum of 2.25%. That extra amount that I choose to take, not going to have an impact on the pension that I'm receiving.
Okay, so whilst you were chatting, I quickly brought up the deeming page on the Services Australia website. So it's very comprehensive, but the nice thing is it's reasonably easy to understand. So when you're reading it, and again, there's some nice videos there too, ladies and gents, that will help you demystify some of that. And in fact, they call it Deeming Demystified is the video title. So that's really cool. So don't always, don't forget, there's a ton load of information, and obviously it's kept up to date. But it also tells you all the different types of financial assets. So savings account, term deposits, managed investments, loans, debentures. We don't use debentures as a word anymore. Geez, Justin, that's a dirty word from 2009. Listed share securities, income streams, and some gifts that you make. So that's an interesting one as well. So look, we're about half time. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson, and with me at the microphone today is Justin Bott, the Media Information Officer from Services Australia. We are talking all things aged pension today and getting down to the minutiae. And it's nice to know sometimes I'm wrong, and I have been proved wrong. I had something in my head about who does get pensions and who doesn't. And so, Justin, thank you very kindly for clearing that up. So we're going to take a short break. Be back with you in just a moment here on Dollars Making Sense. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone this week Justin Bott, the Media Information Officer from Services Australia, whom you also know as Centrelink. Now, we've done a number of shows around the age pension, around the kind of benefits that you do or possibly don't get from Services Australia. And so Justin and I thought it would be a really good idea. In fact, it was Justin's idea, really, that we talk a little bit more about the specificity and get back to age pensions 1.01. Start from the base load. And hey, just before we went to the halftime break, I had to put my hand up and say I had something wrong in my head about what the age pension is or is not. And I guess one of the things that we're still coming to grips with, I think as a society as well, is that the age pension doesn't cut in till 67. Okay, that was a bit of contentious legislation at the time to raise it from 65 to 67. Was it gradual, Justin? Did it go 6 monthly slots, or did it just go in one big chunk?
No, it was a very slow move. It was a year and a half between changes by every 6 months. So the age pension age gradually moved from, well, first thing it did was had to balance men and women to be the same. So first step was moving women up to 65. Then there was a period of time where everybody was 65, and then it gradually moved. For every 18 months, it went up by 6 months.
Okay.
And so over the space of about 5.5 years, it moved it from 65 till eventually hit at 67. The only thing I'd say about that is that every now and then it's a lot of clickbait. There's changes to age pension age projected to. Something came out at the end of last year. Age pension age is coming to 70. There's no movement or anything that anybody's hearing at all that is in any way legitimate. It's just something. It's a great way to make people click on
That's a real scare campaign. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon. Come around election, somebody might. It's just a great way to get people to click on a fake news article, so that the people that run the news article can see, look, I've now got hundreds of thousands of people viewing it. Give me money. It's no truth. The truth is, you've already pointed out, the truth is at the Services Australia website, servicesaustralia.gov.au, and we're going to be talking figures soon. This is the point in time. These are the as they stand right now. The income limits and the asset limits change 3 times a year: 20th of March, 1st of July, 20th September. Always the best thing to do is go to Services Australia's website, servicesaustralia.gov.au. Click on the panel on the front that best suits circumstances, and then find what the new limits are at that point. But yeah.
And again, the truth is out there, but sometimes it's really hard to find. And I've got to say, ladies and gents, Instagram, TikTok, and all those other social media sites is not the place to go. Now, I know, Justin, I've seen you come up on my feed in other forms, in those media channels, YouTube and Facebook feeds as well. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want the best information, go to the actual source website. Don't, and again, Justin, you and I have talked about scam watches and about links in emails and mobile phone text messages. Ladies and gents, they don't do it. Services Australia don't send out links, okay? So log in to your app or log in with your multi-factor authentication. Okay, we've been covering that and we'll keep covering it. We'll keep talking about it because we've got to keep on the ball. I mean, with AI generated bots now, some of them are getting very, very smart. I heard some AI bots last week for voicemails and for receptionists. They're damn good. They're getting better and better. Mind you, I'm still old school. I like to hire some younger people and keep them in jobs, but that's for another time. Now, before we went, I digress. Now, before we went to the break, we were talking about the income test. And again, there's things called deeming, and we talked about deeming before we went to the break. Now, what I wanted to do is now come back to the assets test. Justin, let's do a bit of a deep dive into the assets test. What constitutes an asset, and how does Services Australia calculate that level of assets in order to judge whether you should or should not get the age pension?
So an asset is basically something that you own. It is easier for us to tell you the assets we don't look at rather than the assets that we do look at, because we look at pretty much everything. So we're looking at things like investment properties, bank accounts, share portfolios. You got a Picasso on the wall, you got a grand piano in the living room. They're all potentially assets that we that are accessible. What we don't look at. So the biggest asset that we don't look at for most people is the principal place of residence, the family home, and the surrounding 2 hectares. So for most people, that does not count as an asset for Services Australia. Another big one is superannuation for people who are under age pension age. So if you're under 67 and you have your super sitting in accumulation, so it's where you're putting money in and you're not taking anything out, and it's taxed at 15% and everything like that, that does not count as an asset when you are under 67. The minute you turn 67, whether you've done anything with it or not, it becomes an assessable asset. Some other ones, if you are the sort of person that plans for the future, pay funerals or funeral bonds up to certain limits are also not counted as an asset for Services Australia. The lump sum that you pay when you go into an aged care facility, called a refundable accommodation deposit or the refundable accommodation contribution, doesn't count as an asset for Services Australia as well. And the other one is a relatively new product that's out there. They've been here for a couple of years. They're lifetime income streams. They are partially exempted under the assets test and the special treatment under the income test. These, although they may be Centrelink benefits with them, have a lot of other pros and cons in any financial products. If you're looking at anything like that, you really do need financial professionals to help you, because they might be able to get better pension, but you might not like the other consequences associated. So certainly talk to the professionals before you go down that path.
Yeah, there's a number of different facets when it comes to people. And again, I go to conferences all the time and I meet with investors at various stages. And given the fact that we run a wholesale fund and the wholesale fund has an assets limit, you've got to have at least 2.5 million. I'm often surprised by the angst that people, even at that level of assets, are there trying to jimmy the system so they can get an age pension. I'm looking at them going, guys, if you've got all that money and tied up in a family home or investments and the like, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to angle for an age pension. It's, guys, move beyond it. Get the anger out of you. You may feel that you're entitled to it because you've worked all your life and paid taxes, but the system's there to help people. The age pension is a safety net, and again, I think it is always worth bearing out that when people look at the income and assets tests, it's there and it's done for a reason. And again, Justin, I think you've also described that in many ways for people that don't have a lot, the way that it is accounted for is quite generous. So the things that are not taken into consideration, as you rightly said, I think gives people wide scope to be out there and still drawing, not necessarily a full pension, but at least a partial pension. Isn't that right?
That's right. So in order for you to understand that, you need to know when the pensions can't be paid. So when we're looking at the pension, we've got the two tests. We've got the income test and the assets test. And again, have a look at the website for those cutoff points. But we're going to work on assuming that you are a person who owns their own home. The limits are higher if you don't own the home that you live in. So if you're a single person, there's an amount of income that you can earn before the pension's affected. It's called the income-free area. For a single person, that's $218 a fortnight. For every dollar of income that you earn over that, pension goes down by 50 cents. That's sliding scale. The more you earn, the less pension you get until the pension stops being able to be paid. And that's when your income is at $66,960 per annum, which is about $2,500 a fortnight. That's when the pension stops. Under the assets test, that same single person who owns their own home, assuming for most people that the home doesn't count in this limit, there's an asset-free area, so the amount of assets that you can own before the pension's affected. That's $321,500 in assets. If your assets are under that, still eligible for the full rate of pension under the assets test. For every $1,000 of assets you have over that limit, pension goes down by $3 a fortnight. Sliding scale, the more you own, the less pension you get, until eventually the pension stops being able to be paid when your assessable assets, not including the family home for most people, goes over $714,500. For a member of a couple, those figures are higher. I'm allowed to have my partner and I combined income-free area, $380 a fortnight of combined assessable income. I eventually lose the pension eligibility when my combined assessable income goes over $102,284 per annum, which is just under $4,000 a fortnight. As a homeowner, we're allowed to have 400 and where'd the figure go? Where it is? I'm pretending I had this on my brain, but I didn't actually. It's on a piece of paper written in front of me. I'm allowed to have $481,500 in assessable assets before it starts to affect the rate of pension that I'm getting, and I lose eligibility. The more I own, less pension I get. I lose eligibility when my assets go over $1,074,000 in combined assessable assets. Now, those figures are higher if part of the income that I'm receiving is from wages or eligible self-employment and I can access the work bonus, which we've spoken about in the past, or if I don't own the home that I'm living in and I'm potentially getting rent assistance as well. So that's why you should go to the website. The complete list of those figures are on our website, servicesaustralia.gov.au.
Brilliant. Now, to wrap up, because we're quickly running out of time, you may not be eligible for an age pension when you turn 67, but you may a few years later. So you can apply for the age pension anytime, can't you?
Absolutely correct. It may be that I'm working still and I know that I'm going to stop work and my wage is what's pushing me over the pension eligibility. But I know that I'm stopping work on the 30th of June. So the thing about the age pension is that you can apply for the age pension up to 13 weeks before you become eligible. Now, that might be 13 weeks before I turn age pension age, 67, but it could also be 13 weeks before I know my work is going to stop and my income is going to be under those limits. So if I know I'm stopping work on the 30th of June and I can prove that with a letter from the employer, et cetera, then I can apply for the age pension from the 31st of March for an event that's going to be happening in the future. And we actually recommend that you do that, because then you can get a lot of the background work done before your actual pension date starts. So your pension starts just getting paid normally every fortnight from then. The other tip about applying for the pension very quickly is that if you can provide as much of the possible documentation that you need to provide up front all together in one package, that's just going to make the whole processing experience smoother for everybody, which means it's more likely that pension is going to be paid that much sooner than otherwise.
No worries. Quickly to wrap up, we know that people on age pension also can get a pensioner's concession card. And I know I've got a senior's card these days. Do you have to apply for that as well? And what does it do?
You don't apply for a pensioner concession card. You actually can't. You can apply for a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, which is different, but the pensioner concession card itself comes automatically when you're granted a pension. So no separate process for that. It comes with a pension. So that's disability support pension, carer payment, as well as age pension. They all get the same pensioner concession card. Doesn't matter if you're getting $400 a fortnight, $800 a fortnight, or $40 a fortnight. It's the same pensioner concession card. From the federal government, that gives you access to the reduced prescriptions through the pharmaceutical benefit scheme.
Yes, yeah.
Potentially access to bulk billing, but that's really on the decision of the doctors. Rather, you've got the card, but it's up to the doctors to decide. Things like cheaper hearing aids and other bits of transport that might come through that.
It all helps.
The biggest benefits that the pensioner concession card comes to, as far as I can actually see, is from your state government or your local government rather than through the federal government. So they use the pensioner concession card as a standard to get access to their reductions. Things like reduced council rates, water rates, car registration, driver's license, those sorts of things.
Public transport.
Public transport, yes, but public transport, you already know that you get through your New South Wales, for example, New South Wales State Seniors Card.
Yeah.
So it's not exclusive to your pensioner concession card, but it does come with your pensioner concession card.
Okay, we've got to wrap up. Justin, thanks so kindly for being on the show. As always, I'm just running out of time, so I'm sorry to cut you off. Always a pleasure. Justin Bott, Media Information Officer from Services Australia. Thank you so kindly for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you for having me.